Historians don't want you to know this, but there was once an empire that disappeared in a single night. Imagine standing in a silent, ancient hall. The air is cold. Dust hangs like a thin veil, and the faint smell of burnt cedar still lingers, as if the people who lived here vanished only moments ago. No skeletons, no signs of war, no migration trails, just emptiness. An empire wiped clean, not by fire, not by famine, not by conquerors, but by something far stranger. Double hook suspense line. Some say it was a curse. Others say it was forbidden knowledge finally claiming its price. Our story begins in a region that once connected three ancient worlds, the Near East, the Mediterranean, and the Caucasus. A crossroads of trade, power, and secret knowledge. Today, historians barely mention it. Maps ignore it. Textbooks skip over it. But old travelogues, dusty manuscripts, and forgotten archives tell a different story. A story of a flourishing, advanced civilization that rose suddenly and fell even faster. A city of marble towers, roads paved with obsidian stone, a citadel carved into a mountain, and an empire ruled from a throne lit by eternal flame. For centuries, locals whispered its name, Azeron, a kingdom so prosperous that merchants recorded its markets glowing at night from polished bronze mirrors. A kingdom whose scholars mapped the stars with uncanny precision. Then, one night, it all vanished. No warning, no survivors, nothing but ruins swallowed by earth. Double hook suspense line. But ruins can lie, and sometimes they hide more than they reveal. For decades, archaeologists dismissed Azeron as a legend, a traveler's exaggeration. But in 1912, during a severe drought, the waters of an isolated valley receded and exposed something extraordinary. A perfectly straight basalt causeway, massive stone blocks with strange burn marks, symbols not matching any known ancient script, and in the center, a broken obsidian disc, cracked as if struck by unimaginable force. Soon after, explorers found a buried chamber beneath the valley floor. When they lit their lanterns, the walls reflected light like mirrors, as if coated in volcanic glass. At the far end stood a door, fused shut. Double hook suspense line. Whatever was inside was never meant to be opened again. But before we follow the explorers deeper, we need to understand why this empire matters and why its disappearance terrified ancient chroniclers. Because in forgotten monasteries across Europe, scribes recorded warnings. Not stories, warnings. Lines written in trembling handwriting. When the flame of Azeron dies, the silence returns. Their fall was not natural. Beware the night they vanished. So what really happened that night? To answer that, we must go further back, to the rise of the empire, to the secrets it guarded, and to the one discovery that may have sealed its fate. Because the truth behind Azeron is far darker than anyone imagined. The valley where Azeron once stood was quiet that morning in 1912. Wind moved across the dry lake bed like a whisper, carrying dust, silence, and something older than memory. A team of 4 explorers stepped onto the exposed ground, their boots sinking into soft, cracked mud. Lanterns, ropes, journals wrapped in leather, and a sense that they were trespassing. Double hook suspense line. because legends say this valley was never meant to reopen.
The first discovery, the causeway. As the explorers pressed deeper into the basin, their lanterns illuminated straight lines, too perfect to be natural. A black causeway, smooth, angular, cut with precision no Bronze Age tools could achieve. When they touched the stone, their fingers came away warm, as if the structure still held the memory of tremendous heat. One explorer whispered, "This wasn't carved, it was melted." But that's not the whole story, because etched along the edges were symbols, not cuneiform, not Phoenician, not Hittite, not Greek. Sharp geometric characters, almost mathematical. A code. But the code led somewhere, and they followed it. The second discovery, the buried hall. A crack in the earth caught their attention, a narrow fissure. When they cleared the debris, they found a staircase descending into darkness. Steps carved from volcanic glass, edges sharp as blades, walls smooth and reflective like polished obsidian. They descended 40 feet. At the bottom, their lanterns lit a hall so perfectly symmetrical it felt unnatural, as if designed by someone who understood geometry in ways that should not exist for that time. At the center of the hall stood a pedestal, and on that pedestal, a stone tablet wrapped in hardened resin. They brushed the dust away. Symbols, again, the same that lined the causeway. But this time, the characters formed patterns, spirals, intersections, not writing, coordinates. Coordinates to something buried even deeper. The third discovery, the sealed door. At the far end of the mirrored hall was a door fused shut, not destroyed, fused, like metal melted into itself by extreme heat. Above it was a single engraved symbol, a sun split into two halves. When one explorer pressed his ear against the door, he stepped back immediately, trembling. He said he heard something, a faint hum, a vibration, like a distant heartbeat pulsing behind the stone. But what if the truth was buried deeper? Because one of the explorers, a historian named Dr. Levin, carried with him an old manuscript copied from a medieval monastery in southern France. The monks called it the Chronicle of the Falling Sun. Most dismissed it as myth until now. Inside, the manuscript described a kingdom with towers of fire, a throne of glass, and a night when the sky split into two. A night when the heat of the gods melted the stone of men. It said, "They vanished not by war, but by their own awakening." Double hook suspense line. And standing before that fused door, the explorers realized the monks were not describing a myth. They were describing this place. The air from the shaft was freezing, unnaturally cold. It felt ancient, untouched by wind, sunlight, or time. The explorers lowered their lanterns. The light barely reached the bottom. Metallic ribs curved downward like the inside of a colossal furnace, or something even more ominous. Each step echoed. Clink, clink, clink. The deeper they went, the stronger the low vibration became. The same hum behind the fused door, in the hall above. Slow, heartbeat sound. Badum, badum. Because the thing that killed the empire was still alive. The chamber of ashen light. At the bottom of the shaft was a circular chamber. No carvings, no statues, just smooth metallic walls that curved like liquid metal frozen in time. At the center stood a tall black monolith, half buried in the floor. Its surface pulsed with faint, ember-red veins, like dying fire under cold stone. One explorer whispered, "This isn't natural." Another replied, "No, it's engineered." And then, as their lanterns passed over the monolith, symbols ignited across its surface. Lines of light, geometric spirals, patterns matching the coordinates found upstairs. But the light was not solid. It flickered like flame, then twisted like smoke. Thunder rumbling. The monolith spoke. Not with a voice, but with sound waves shifting the air, shaking dust from the ceiling. A low resonant vibration that formed a simple message. Do not awaken what sleeps. But it was already too late. The lost technology of Azeron. The explorers realized the impossible. This was not a religious object, not an idol, not a tomb. This was a machine beyond the technological level of any known Bronze Age or Iron Age society. The medieval monks called it the sun that splits itself. Ancient travelers described towers that glowed at night. And now here it was, the source of the Empire's power. Azeron had not been a simple kingdom. It was an advanced society built around a mysterious energy source, an energy that could heat stone until it melted, or worse. But that's not the whole story, because the medieval manuscript held a warning. The flame obeys the wise, but consumes the proud. Azeron didn't find this power. They awakened it. The last night of the Empire. The chamber walls began to shimmer, projecting faint images like memories trapped in the stone. The explorers watched as blurry scenes formed. A great hall. Scholars gathered around a blazing sphere suspended in air. Towers shining like molten gold. Crowds cheering. Azeron was thriving. Then the scene changed. The sphere grew brighter, hotter, unstable. Rips of white light tore across the sky. Mountains glowed red. The halls shook as if the ground itself were screaming. The scholars panicked. Guards ran. Children hid behind pillars of black stone. Whispers. They tried to shut it down. They couldn't. The sun they created began devouring itself and everything connected to it. In a desperate attempt to save the world, the kings and scholars sealed the monolith beneath the earth and let their entire empire die to contain it. Everything was sacrificed. Thunder, rumbling. Double hook suspense line. Azeron didn't vanish overnight. They erased themselves to stop something far worse. The chamber shook violently. Metal ribs screamed under the pressure. Cracks spread across the floor like dark lightning veins. The monolith pulsed brighter, hotter, awakening like a star dragged back from extinction. The explorers scrambled toward the shaft. One lantern fell, shattered, plunging half the chamber into darkness. Whispers. They tried to shut it down. They couldn't. The sun they created began devouring itself, and everything connected to it. In a desperate attempt to save the world, the kings and scholars sealed the monolith beneath the earth and let their entire empire die to contain it. Everything was sacrificed. Thunder, rumbling. The memory projection ended. The chamber went silent. Double hook suspense line. Azeron didn't vanish overnight. They erased themselves to stop something far worse. The chamber shook violently. Metal ribs screamed under the pressure. Cracks spread across the floor like dark lightning veins. The monolith pulsed brighter, hotter, awakening like a star dragged back from extinction. The explorers scrambled toward the shaft. One lantern fell, shattered, plunging half the chamber into darkness. Whispers, rise, a low chorus, ancient voices fading in and out. The monolith spoke again, this time louder, clearer. The cycle returns. Thunder, rumbling. Double hook suspense line. It wasn't just a machine. It was a warning written in fire. They climbed the metallic ladder as tremors shook the chamber. Heat surged upward, a blast of air so hot it scorched the walls of the shaft. Behind them, beams of white fire erupted from the monolith, twisting like living branches. Stone melted, metal curled. The hum became a scream. One explorer looked back, but only for a moment. The sight was unforgettable. A living sun being born in the dark. They reached the top of the shaft and threw themselves into the mirrored hall. Dust exploded from the ceiling. Shards of obsidian cracked loose and fell like raining glass. The fused door, the one sealed by ancient kings, glowed red. It wouldn't hold for long. Go! They sprinted toward the staircase, hearts pounding, lungs burning. The hall vibrated under their feet. Symbols along the walls flickered violently, then burst into blinding flame. Double hook suspense line. The Empire died, sealing this thing away. Now it wanted out. The explorers emerged into the valley just as a shockwave burst through the underground halls. The ground rose, once, twice, then settled with a long, echoing groan. Dust billowed from cracks in the earth. A faint orange glow pulsed beneath the lakebed like a heartbeat, fading into silence. Then, everything stopped. No explosion, no eruption. Just a sudden, unnatural calm, as if the monolith changed its mind. The wind returned gently across the valley. Silence settled like a blanket. The world exhaled. But the explorers knew the truth. The machine wasn't destroyed. It simply went dormant again, waiting. In the weeks that followed, the explorers reported the findings. Governments denied them. Universities refused to publish. Funding was cut. Reports were sealed. One by one, the explorers vanished from public record. Their journals disappeared. The valley was flooded by artificial means, a dam suddenly constructed for regional development, and the world moved on. But not really, because all four of the explorers personally confessed the same chilling thought. The Empire didn't die because of the machine. It died because they understood it. What the kings of Azeron awakened was not meant for human hands. A force older than their empire, older than their world, a power that answered only to itself, and it demanded silence. So, here's the question that still haunts historians, researchers, and anyone who dares to look deeper. If an entire empire erased itself to seal this device away, then how close are we to awakening something similar? Soft heartbeat. Whispers fading. Thunder rumbling in the distance. Because if a kingdom as advanced as Azeron vanished overnight, what else has been buried, erased, or quietly removed from our past? And more importantly, what happens when the next forgotten machine wakes up? Fade to black, soft rumble, a final whisper. The cycle returns.